Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Yevamos Daf Tzaddik. We're right on top of the Amud here. Tashma. We're in the midst of a discussion. There's a machlokes between Rav Yehuda and Rav Nosson Rav Oshia. Can Bezdin be oiker davar min haTorah? Bezdin is looking to maintain a halacha to ensure the proper compliance with respect to certain isurim, but in order to ensure proper compliance, can they go ahead and make a gzeira which will remove an iser, which will make a kula? You see, to make a chumrah, to make a fence around the Torah, a gzeira, a takana, a siyag, a chumrah, of course. We do it all the time to ensure proper compliance of Dini HaTorah. What about if they're going to be matir and isser to accomplish that same goal? So that was the question we dealt with yesterday. Can Bezdin be oiker or davar min haTorah? Can they uproot something with the goal in mind of preserving the Torah, but it is by way of canceling a halacha? Canceling teruma, giving a husband Yerusha when he's really not entitled to that Yerusha min haTorah. So Rabbah says no. Rav Nosson Rav Oshia says no. You can't cancel a halacha. You could add, you can reinforce, but you can't cancel a halacha. You can't uproot a halacha, even though you have good intentions. Rav Yehuda disagrees. He says, as long as the ultimate goal here is maintaining and preserving the Torah, even if it involves a temporary suspension of a halacha based in our oiker or davar min haTorah, they're allowed to do that. Says the Gemara, Tashma, Rav Yehuda speaking, I'll bring you a raya that in fact Beis Din has the power, has the ability to be oiker or davar min haTorah when they see fit. Achal teruma tmeya. This fellow ate teruma b'shoigeg. Didn't know that a non-kohen may not eat teruma. Didn't know it was teruma. Whatever the circumstances, he ate teruma, which was actually tummy, which a kohen could not eat. He still has to pay back for that teruma. Mishalim chulin tahirim. So he pays produce, fruit, not money. Rashi says it has to be something which can potentially revert into teruma. So he pays chulin, which is tahir. That's the ideal way of repayment. Shileim chulin tmeim. Suppose he pays back chulin, which happens to be tummy. That's not the ideal repayment. Sumchas oimer mishum Rabbi Meir. Sumchas quotes Rabbi Meir as follows: B'shoigeg. He didn't know that this was tummy. It was by mistake. Tashluaf tashlumen. We consider it payment. We'll leave it as is. Rashi says, based on the Gemara we learned yesterday, that really something which is tummy can technically become truma as well. So here, b'di'evet it works. But b'mezid, if he did it knowingly, he knew that this was tummy and he paid the tirkayin in exchange for the truma that he ate. Ein tashlum of tashlumen. It doesn't count. He has to repay. Whether it was b'shoigeg or b'mezid, either way, tashlum of tashlumen, the repayment stands. It remains teruma, belongs to the kohen, but he has to repay. V'chayzer mishalim chulin tahir, he has to pay again. This time, make sure it's chulin which are tahir. V'havina, but we had a kasha on this price. V'mezid, ein tashlum of tashlumen. So Rabbi Meir says, well, if he did it b'mezid, it's not considered repayment. We cancel it. Why? What's wrong? Tavay alav bracha. If anything, he's deserving of appreciation. Why? De'achal minei. What did he eat of the kohen? What did he take? Midi, something, the loika chazile, which is not suitable for the kohen, be made to maser when the kohen is tummy. Right? Remember, he ate teruma, which is tummy, which in any case, the kohen could not really enjoy properly. He couldn't eat it when he was tummy. Rashi explains the Gemara means there's a double problem. the item itself is tummy, and we learned this a little while ago that truma, which is tummy, may not be consumed. It cannot be eaten. There's a mitzvah asay not to eat it. On top of the fact that if the kohen himself was tummy as well, there's a double issa there. Rashi brings that he gets misa, even if it's truma tmeya. And this is a big controversy. The Mefarshim on the side seem to have a problem with that halacha, and they reconcile Rashi's shita according to it's a certain case that Rashi is speaking about. In any case, the bottom line is, what did he take from the kohen? He took truma tmeya, which isn't really something that can be consumed properly. And what did he give him back? Something way better. The Shalem, he gave him chulin, which are tamei. The Shalem midi, he paid him back something which the kohen could eat when he's tamei. There's no restriction upon eating chulin, which is tamei. So if anything, he gets a bracha for giving him more than he took. Now Rashi asks a kasha. Fact is that what you give him becomes teruma. That's the whole concept of repaying him, fruit. That produce turns into truma. That's how you accomplish your kapara. That's how you compensate for what you did. So think of it like this. He's taking chulin tamei, giving it to the kohen, which now turns into teruma, and it results in, it's truma tmeya. It ends up being truma tmeya. So what did the Gemara mean? That it gives him something which is suitable for him, be made to masis. Rashi says, well, it's not what he had in mind. When he paid him the chulin tmeim, he didn't mean that it should become truma tmeya. He was giving him something that better than he got. So really, he's deserving of praise. Now, some Mefarshim asking, who's to say what he knew, what he didn't know? Maybe this is what he had in mind, so why are you praising him? So Tosfos learns a bit differently. He says, look, as far as the payer, as far as me, I had the truma tmeya, and I'm paying you back chulin tmeim. I'm giving you something of higher value. That's the point. I'm losing more than I gained. I got something of lower value. Truma tmeya isn't worth much. The only thing it's suitable for is to be used as fuel. So I'm taking something of low value. I'm giving you chulin tmeim, which is really more expensive. So although ultimately it turns into truma tmeya, so really it's back to square one. But the fact is, I gave more than I got. Tavel of bracha. That's what the Gemara means. In any case, why are we penalizing him? We're saying it's ein tashlum of tashlum. We cancel it. Doesn't work. We nullify this payment. Why? If anything, I deserve a bracha. Oh, v'amar Rava. V'amrila, some say kedi. Nameless. Kedi means without a name. They were unsure as to who exactly answered this teretz, that the brayso has to be modified somewhat. It's meant to be learned as though it's missing some words, and learn it as follows. We begin by saying, Ochal teruma tameya. If you ate teruma, which is tamei, isn't worth very, very much. Mishalom kol, do we allow you to pay back anything you want? You can pay back chulin tahirim, chulin tmeim. Either way, you're ahead of the game. It's definitely worth more than the truma tmeya that you had, because nobody can eat truma tmeya. So that's a simple, straightforward halach. But ochal truma tahira, if he ate proper truma b'shoigig, what does he pay back? So ideally, preferably, he should pay mishalem chulin tahira. Right? You ate truma tahira, repay chulin tahira. Let's say he didn't. Shilem chulin tmeim. So he paid chulin, which is lesser in value. It's tamei. Does it hold or not? Sumchas Omer, Mishumar Reb Meir, he quotes Reb Meir as follows. It depends on your level of awareness. B'shoigig. If it was b'shoigig, unknown to you, fine. We let it stand. Tashlum of tashlumin. B'mezid. If you did it purposely, you purposely shortchanged the kohen, ain't tashlum of tashlumin, it doesn't count. It gets cancelled. So basically, the material that you repaid, the fruit that you gave him, does not turn into truma. You take it back, and you give him back proper payment. That's Rabbi Meir quoting. Sumcha is quoting Rabbi Meir. Chacham say, Well, bein b'shoigig, bein b'mezid, whether it was b'shoigig or b'mezid, doesn't matter. Tashlum of tashlumin, the payment sticks, it holds. It stays by the kohen as teruma, right? Because what you pay converts into truma. V'chayzer mishalom chulin tahir, you have to pay again, double payment. So according to this approach, according to the way we explain the brisa now, we have like this: if you ate chulin tmeim, you ate truma tmeya, something of lower value, and you're free to pay whatever you wish. You can pay him chulin tahirim, chulin tmeim, it doesn't matter, because after all, you ate something of low value, of little value. Whereas if you ate something of higher value, truma tahira, Chacham still say, look, either way, what you pay is what you paid. It sticks, it holds, it's valid. But when it was Truma Tmei, it was when you paid him Chulin Tmei, and since it wasn't the ideal repayment, you should have given him something Tahir. So whether it was B'Shegig or B'Mezid, you have to repay again. Rabbi Meir says, if it was B'Shegig, leave it alone. If it was B'Mezid, then you get back what you paid. Your payment is rejected, it's not accepted. Asks the Gemara, what do you mean rejected? So it doesn't turn into Truma, doesn't belong to the Kayan. But realize that Minat Torah, this payment sticks, it's valid. In this case, Minat Torah, it's a proper payment. After all, he paid him back the fruit. In fact, suppose, theoretically, the Kohen will take that fruit, use it to be Mekadesh and Isha, it's his wife. Tafsila Kiddushe, the Kiddushi sticks, it holds. And still, what did Rabbanan say? Because you tried to shortchange the Kohen, V'amar Rabbanan ain't tashlum of tashlumin. We cancel the payment. Give it back. V'kasharinan eshes ish la'alma. It never belonged to the Kohen, it's not Truma. Give it back to the Yisrael. The Kiddushin has been invalidated. It's not his wife. It's an eshes ish. No. We cancel the whole procedure. Why? Because we want to ensure that one who eats Truma pays back properly. So in effect, you are being oiker davar minat Torah. Bezdin, the Chachamim, the leaders in Klal Yisrael have the ability to cancel a halacha, to cancel an isser, eshes ish. For the better good of the general community of Klal Yisrael. So it's a right to my shita, says Rav Chisda, that bezdin are oiker and davar minat Torah. Answers the Gemara, no. That's not the way to learn the brisa. My ain't tashlum of tashlumin. Come Rabbi Meir. Although Rabbi Meir says ain't tashlum of tashlumin, doesn't mean that we cancel that payment, or we take it away from the kohen. No, the boy lemihadat shlumei chulin tahirin. All he meant to say is, if he did so b'mezid, you have to pay another measure of chulin tahirin. Of course, what you gave him stays by him. It's truma, belongs to the kohen. He used it to be mekadesh isha. It holds. All Rabbi Meir meant to say was, pay again. Well, yachi sumchas hain rabbanon. Then there's no machlekes in the brisa. Sumchas, quoting Rabbi Meir, that you have to repay is the same as the rabbanon, who say you have to repay. There's one afkamina. Amar v'ach breder Rav Ika. What about if it was b'shoigig? Rabbi Meir says, b'mezid, he's in trouble. But b'shoigig, we don't seem to be concerned because what inadvertently wasn't intentional. But the Rabbanan equate. They don't differentiate between shoigig and mezid. Kansu shoigig atu mezid ika benayu. Do we apply the knas? Do we penalize a fellow who did it b'shoigig on account of mezid? It might lead to mezid. That's the point in afkemina. This nuance is the machlekes. Rameir says no knas by shoigig. Rabbanan say there is. But according to all shitas, tashlum of tashlumin. Even if you had truma tahira and you repaid chulin tameim, the payment sticks. It stands. It stays true. It turns into truma and stays truma. It belongs to the kohen. The kedushin nagdirus is valid. The question only is whether he has to do another payment afterwards as a knas, as a punishment for shortchanging the kohen. Tosis asks a kasha. What's the Gemara's raya? We learned yesterday that when it comes to monetary issues, all agree that hefker Bezdin has the ability to render something ownerless, to reappropriate possessions according to need and how you see fit, having the better good and the interest of Klal Yisrael in mind. And here, perhaps that's what happens. They expropriated this property of the Kohen, and that's how the Eshes Ish is no longer an Eshes Ish, because it was never the Kohen's property. So he says, what did the Kohen do wrong? He did nothing wrong. The Yisrael who ate his Truma did something wrong by giving him this material, but the Kohen himself, the recipient, did nothing wrong. And therefore, there's nothing to justify Hefker Bezdin. It's not just a magic trick that's applied indiscriminately. We did something wrong with your property, with your money, we take it away from you. But we couldn't apply it to the Kohen in this case, who did nothing wrong. So the Gemara's raya was a solid raya. Why would the payment become a non-payment? Why would the Truma status get cancelled? Why wouldn't it belong to the Kohen? Answer is, because Bezdin are going to be Eiker David Ben HaTorah. Because that's their tafka. They have to ensure proper compliance with halachas HaTorah, even if it means suspending halachas and revoking Yisurim. The Gemara responds by pushing away the raya. Brisa never meant that they revoke the Truma status from this payment. Toshma, here comes another raya to support Rav Chizda that Bezdin has that ability. Dam shenitma v'zarkai, dam of a carbon. So the blood of the carbon became tummy, and the Kohen took the dam and did zrika on the mizbeach. B'shoigeg, if it was by accident, hurtza. So the carbon is accepted, it's valid, it's kosher. B'mezid, done on purpose. Lo yehurtza, the carbon is not accepted, and what happens now? The owner has to bring another carbon. V'hacha. But here in this case, even though the blood of the carbon was tummy, the medairaisa artsuyi meratza min HaTorah, it works. The Sanya, as the Brisa says, Alma tzitz meratza. The tzitz, one of the 8 begadim of the Kohen Gadol. So this gold plate is meratza. It addresses, what does it address? Various deficiencies, tumah-related deficiencies associated with karbonis. Alma tzitz meratza, al adam, al basar, al chelev, all different parts of the karbonis, shenitma, which became tummy. Bein b'shoigig, bein b'mezid, bein b'oines, bein b'ratzain, whether it was b'shoigig or it was b'mezid, b'oines, faultless, b'ratzain, willfully. Truth is that it's almost a repetition, because mezid and ratzin are pretty much the same thing, but the Brisa, the Gemara many times would use parallel language, matching language. So mezid is the contrast to shoigig, and ratzin is the contrast to oines. So either way, ben biyachad, ben betzibur, whether we're dealing with a private carbon or a public carbon, if a tumah was present in any of these elements of the carbon, the tzitz addresses it, and the carbon is kosher. Right? And still, what do Rabbanan say? Va'ami Rabbanan lo yehurtze. Rabbanan say, well, if it was b'mezid, it doesn't work. And what happens as a result? And the owner will have to bring another carbon, which technically, min HaTorah, he's not obligated to bring. It's chulin, it's a non-carbon. He's bringing it to the Azor as a carbon. That's an Avera. Apparently, the Chachamim have the ability to revoke a halacha, to remove an Isser, to allow chulin l'Azara. For the betterment of the general community, to ensure proper compliance with halachas. And therefore they say, look, if you're doing the zrika of the dam, b'mezid, you took dam tummy, you did it b'mezid, we nullify the whole process. That's the right of Chizda. Amar Rabbi Yesi bar Chanina, don't bring a raya from here. My loy hurtze de ka'amar. Although we mentioned the term loy hurtze, it doesn't mean that the carbon was not accepted, that the carbon is not kosher. They have to bring another one. No! Lahater basar ba'achila. All we meant was that the basar of this carbon cannot be eaten. Carbon is kosher. But we don't allow achilas ha-carbon. That's all. We'll leave that out. Aval ba'alim niskaper bay, but the owner had his kapara. Because it sits, compensates for the tuma present in the dam. Asks the Gemara, 1 second, why is that any better? Soif. At the end of the day, ultimately, kamis akra achilas basar, you're uprooting, you're canceling the mitzvah of eating the basar of the carbon, which is an integral part of the kapara process. Pasuk speaking about the kohanim who consume the karbonis, makes mention of the term kapara there as well to teach us that kapara is not accomplished merely by bringing, the portions on the mizbeach, the dam or the chelav, even the chelak of the kohanim. By way of the achilas kohanim, kapara is accomplished as well. They play a critical role in bringing about kapara. So achilas kohanim is not to be taken lightly. Melamed, we learn shekohanim oichlim ubalim miskapram. The kohanim eat. The kohanim achieve kapara. The balim achieve kapara. In fact, the Rishonim point out that this applies to any part of the carbon that it's meant to be eaten, whether the chelik that the kohanim eat or sometimes the owner would eat. The shlamim, whatever it is. The point is achilas ha-carbon accomplishes kapara, and here you're canceling that. Isn't that just another form of oikrin davar min haTorah? So back to the raya. Apparently the Chachamim can do that. Amar lei, so Rabbi responded not so fast. It's very different. I agree. They're doing something. They're interfering, so to speak. They're canceling some element of the carbon, but it's different. It's different than oikrin davar min haTorah. You know why? Sheva al tasa shani. Sheva al tasa is in a passive format. They're not telling you to actively negate din haTorah. They're not being matir and isser, etc. They're just saying, look, refrain, hold back from eating the carbon. That they can do. That they can do. Let's go to Rashi. About 8 lines from the bottom. What's the difference between sheva al tasa and otherwise? Says Rashi, sheva al tasa. A passive negation is different. Lav akirahi. It's not considered uprooting. You're not actively uprooting. You're just passively ignoring a mitzvah. That's different. Kigoyin achilas basar. Aseihi. Consuming the basar carbon is an asay, right? V'omer Rabbanan. And Rabbanan tell you, in this case, where you're not behaving appropriately, you did the zrika betuma, you know what? You're not going to have this privilege. Sit back and relax. Sheva al teichel. Don't have the carbon. We want to highlight the importance of bringing the carbon b'tahara. This is not a carbon that you meant to eat. Lav akira b'yadaimu. It's not considered uprooting it. Elamameli misakra. It's happening by default, by circumstance. You don't eat it, but maybe the carbon won't be eaten. Aval truma. In contrast to the previous example of truma, the ka'amar lo osav leklum. If you tell me that the truma is not truma, in effect you're allowing an isser. Umapkes lo lechulin. You're turning it into chulin. That's a cancellation of halacha in an active format. Akiru mamashi. You're actually uprooting an halacha, and that's a chiddush. That I don't agree with, says Rabbi. Amar Leiser, if Chizr responded, I have a whole long list of rayos to support my position. I wanted to ask you from all these cases where we see the Chachamim negated a mitzvah when they saw a need to do so. Orel hazah, we'll get to it in a minute. Orel hazah v'izmel sadem b'tzitzis v'kivsei atzeres v'shefer lulav. Explain in a minute. So in all these cases, Chachamim suspended halachas, negated concepts of the Torah, with the goal in mind of preserving and maintaining, halachas in the Torah. And this would have been a right to my shita. But now it doesn't work because hashta the shanisla. Now you've answered, you've presented the distinction between active and passive. Sheva al tasa loy me'akaru. A passive annulment is not considered an akira. Once you've introduced that concept, that distinction, now all my rayas fall by the wayside because kulu nami, all those rayas that I would have brought to support my position, that the Chachamim could be Eiker Halacha, guess what? They're all the same type of thing. Sheva al Tasa. Ninu. And therefore, I could not bring a raya from there anymore. So Aral, Rashi says, is a case where a fellow became a ger on Erev Pesach. Technically, you can eat the carbon tonight, but we don't allow it because next year, he might become tummy 2 days before Pesach. And we'll say, look, well, last year, I touched the mace 2 days before Pesach. He didn't realize the difference is last year he was a guy, right? And last year, I touched the mace 2 days before Pesach, and 2 days later, I had the carbon Pesach. So you won't realize that last year he was a guy, and he's not going to be Mekabel Tumah when he's a guy. But this year it's different. If he's tummy 2 days before Pesach, he has to wait 7 days. So in order to avoid that confusion, we say every ger who comes in right before Pesach has to wait 7 days before he gets the Korban Pesach. Hazah, a fellow who's in need of Hazah's Paraduma, on Erev Pesach, to allow him the Korban Pesach, but it's Shabbos, there's Shavuos Midrabanan. We don't do it because it looks like you're fixing him. So we hold back from Hazah's Paraduma, even though it's at the expense of his ability to bring Korban Pesach. So Din the Rabban is mevatel, a mitzvah. But you realize all these things are passive annulments. Sheva al Tasa, Ismail. So it's Shabbos, time for Bris Milah. They forgot to bring the knife. We don't allow them to bring it through courtyards, even though it's just a question of the Rabban Erev Chatzeres. No. The Din the Rabban stands in the way of the mitzvahs Milah min HaTorah. Sadeh Mitzitzis, you have this sheet made of linen material, pishtan. Technically, min HaTorah, you can affix wool and strings on your linen material, because when it comes to tzitzis, kilayim is mutter, but the Chacham were concerned that perhaps this sheet will be used for nighttime use, in which case there's no chiv of tzitzis and doesn't justify kilayim, so they say don't apply tzitzis to a sheet of pishtan, so there be mevatel mitzvahs asay for concern that it might lead to an isser. Kivsi atzeres. First Rashi says, I'm not sure what this is. I was not mikabel for my Rabbi Yisai, but then he says, I'll tell you what it is. I think it's connected to a Gemara in Beitza, that the karbonis, the kivsi atzeres, meant to be brought on shvoy. So he did the shchita shaloi l'shman. It wasn't for the sake of his carbon, so it was an improper shchita. Technically, you can just conclude the process, even though you don't have it the way it's meant to be. It doesn't really count, as an obligatory carbon, but it's still a kosher carbon, so you can really do the rest of the process. But still, Chacham say if it's on Shabbos itself, don't get involved any further, because it's not really obligatory anymore, because he deviated, he did a shloi lishma. So you're in effect canceling 3 mitzvahs: Zrika, Haktaras Emurin, and the Achilas HaKarban. Why? Because you want to maintain the Shvus D'Rabbanan, which is not to go ahead and do Zrika unnecessarily on Shabbos, because again you're going through a process which looks like you're fixing, creating something, and then the Rabbanon, and that brings about the cancellation of this carbon with all its associated mitzvahs. What else do we have? Shofar and lulav. These are well-known halachas. We don't blow the shofar on Shabbos. We don't shake the lulav on Sukkot, which falls out on Shabbos, all because of a chazal who were concerned that they might be carried through the street. Right, so that gezerah is mevatel mitzvah say. So theoretically, this would support Rav Chizda's position that Bezdin, Chacham, the leaders in Klal Yisrael, have the ability to be mevatel a davar min HaTorah for the sake of the greater good, to maintain the Torah, to protect us from Isurim, to ensure compliance. But Rav Chizda himself concedes, look, now, once you've given me that concept of sheva al tasa, that passive annulment is certainly acceptable. It's different than active annulment. In that case, all my rayos, all my supports are no longer going to prove anything with respect to an active akira. But let's not give up. Tashma. Here comes another right. Pasuk says, Elov tishmon. You have a navi emes. You're meant to listen to him at all times. Afilu oimer lecha al aver al achas mikol mitzvah shabbat Torah. Even if the Navi tells you to do an avera, to go in Eliyahu Barak Carmel, Eliyahu up on Har Carmel told him to bring the karbonis outside the Mikdash. You're meant to listen to him. Hakoil lifi sha'a shmalai. All according to the need, according to the a time, according to the Shah. Whatever he tells you, listen to him. No. It's clear from here that a Navi, and likewise a Chacham, because, as Tosfos points out, when it comes to negating mitzvahs HaTorah, a Navi really shouldn't really have any more authority than any other Chacham. Because we know that the Pasuk says, Eila HaMitzvahs. The Gemara Megillah says that a Navi cannot be Mechadesh Davar Me'ata. He can't change one iota of the Torah, even a Navi. So the fact that the Pasuk tells you that you listen to a Navi when he's telling you to be over an Avera, apparently this is an exception. When there's a special need, a Tzorech Shah, a Navi, a Chacham, Bezdin, can even nullify a mitzvah or tell you to be over an Avera. Says Rav Chizda, here's my raya. Bezdin oikrin davar min HaTorah. Even when it's a kula, even when they're canceling an issur. No, says the Gemara Shani also, it's very different. There's a pasuk. Well, let's learn from there to elsewhere as well. If there's a need, that's tzorech. Chacham can make a takana even at the expense of an issur. Migdar milsa shani. It's very different there. When he's trying to rebuild, trying to fix a breach in Klal Yisrael. Rashi says it was a Klal Yisrael being swayed by the Nevi'ah Habal, by the Avodah Zarah, being swayed to Avodah Zarah. It was critical that he steps in there and he does something unconventional, even if it involves doing something which is otherwise considered a grave issur, like shchutei chutz, bringing a carbon outside of the mikdash. But it was a one-time thing. Hira'ashah. Some Rishonim learn it involves the community at large. It wasn't just an individual. It's Klal Yisrael. Tosfos is a mashma that it's more a point of tzorech shah. It was a temporary, one-time need. It was a time-related concern. Migdar milsa, to be goider, to create a fence, to maintain Klal Yisrael and their observance of mitzvahs. That's different. That's different than going and making a takana for all time, such as the halachas of truma and all that. That's a long-term proposition. If that involves an akiras isser, who's to say they can do that? Here it's different. It was critical that the Chacham or the Navi steps in at a time of emergency and does something drastic, even if it involves doing an Avera. The Rambam says it's like a beautiful mashal. Says like a person who's lo yaleinu chas v'shalom ill. So sometimes it requires doing something drastic, an operation to amputate, to do something unconventional, something which you wouldn't ordinarily done, but it's emergency. Says the Rambam Hilchos Mamrim. Here, El with the Nevi'ah Bal, there's an emergency. You step in at all costs. Continues the Gemara Tashma. Here comes another writer of Chizda. Bitloi mevutel. Suppose somebody sends a get to his wife. He has a change of heart. He gets up and he says, you know what, I'm being mevatel the get. Technically it works, because as Rashi says, until it gets to her, it's not really a get, it wasn't really activated. But Rabban Gamliel Hazaken was masaken, you can't do that. It's not fair. She's not going to know. She's going to think she's divorced, go get married to somebody else. A while later, she'll hear from her husband that he's still her. You can't do that. A special takana, he's not meant to do that. What happens if he does it? Husband is mevatel the get prior to the get reaching his wife. Bitloi mevutel works. The get becomes cancelled. Divi Rebbe. Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer no. You can't annul, you can't add to condition, you can't tinker with the get. That's the Chacham made a takana. Once you send it off, it's out of your hands. You can't be mevatel it, you can't add more conditions. Because otherwise, what's to the authority of Bezdin? Who have told you, who have warned you, who have established a takana not to do this. So your bittul is worthless and the get is valid. Says the Gemara. Listen to this. Here we have a case where the Raisa batal get, right? Menat Torah. What could he do? He did the bittul on the get, it's over. So really she's his wife. Because of this power of Bezdin, to uphold the authority of Bezdin, Kosharina and Eshesish La'alma, you're going to let the get stand? It's not a get. You're going to let it stand and you're going to let the Eshesish marry out? That's terrible. Apparently. This is a riot to my shita, says Rav Chisda. That when Bezdin sees fit, when they see a need, they have the ability to cancel halachis, to cancel isurim. Answers the Gemara, no. Here it's different. Once again, here it's different. Amanda Mekadesh, when one does Kiddushin, Adata the Rabbanan Mekadesh, he hinges it, he depends it on the Das Rabbanan. As we all say, right? Hariyat Mekudeshes Li, right? Kedas Moshe v'Yisrael. In accordance with the instructions of Moshe. Right? So that's the mindset. When a person does his Kiddushin, it's dependent upon the approval of the Bezdin, of the Chachamim Shebedar. And here, in this case, Vafki'inu Rabbanan l'Kiddushin. Here that he was Mevatel as get. So technically, she's still married to him. No, we let her marry out. Why? Chachamim nullified the entire Kiddushin retroactively. So he was never married to her. Amali Ravinu Ravashi. I understand. Hatenach, that works the Kaddish B'Kaspa. Different ways of doing Kiddushin. If you gave her a coin, fine. So the Chacham could say, you know what, the coin is hefker. So there's a way to nullify the Kiddushin and make her unmarried retroactively. Kaddish B'Biyah, Meikal Meimar, but if you interacted with her physically, how can you take that away? That too, says the Gemara, Shavyu Rabban L'Bilasa, they turned the Biyah, Bilas Nus, into an interaction unrelated to marriage. Okay? So here there's a simple way out. Easy solution. They were never married. Tashma, here comes another right. Amar Blazer ben Yaakov, Shemati, I heard from my Rebbeim, that sometimes, Shebezdin Makin, Vo'inshin Shalom An Torah, they could strike, they could punish, even though it's not really sourced in the Torah, if they see fit. They see a special need to resort to drastic measures to maintain the integrity of Klal Yisrael, integrity of Torah, they can do that. They can hit, they can kill. V'lo lav divrei Torah. They're not trying to be over on Torah. Elo lasik siyag Torah, to create a fence, to guard the Torah. In fact, there were two stories. Umasa b'adam echad. There was a story with this fellow Sharochav al Sus. He was riding on a horse in public. B'Shabbos, on Shabbos. It's not Issa D'Oraisa. It's only the Rabbanon. You might rip off a branch. But it was a very desperate time, very troublesome time. B'mei Yevanim, time of the Yevanim, who gave us a very hard time. And in fact, many in the Jewish people were swayed by the Yevanim, became Messiavnim. Chachamim had to step in before it gets too late. They dragged this person to Bezdin. They gave him a skill, they killed him. Because he was deserving of skila. He didn't do it Itzadei Raisa. Because during that point in history, it was critical to resort to such measures to protect the Torah. Vishuv Mas, another story with a fellow, he interacted with his wife physically, in public, underneath the fig tree, something totally inappropriate. They took him to Bezdin. They gave him Malchus. Because he was deserving of Malchus. He didn't commit such a serious offense. Ella, rather, unfortunately, at that point in time, this type of behavior was prevalent. They had to go and step in, do something drastic to make a statement. Apparently, Chachamim could do whatever they see fit, even an Isser, hitting somebody, killing somebody, to protect the Torah. Apparently, the better good of Torah, the interest in it, to preserve Torah, supersedes all the other concerns, all the other Yisurim. That's a writer of Chisda. That Bezdin ha'ikadav Torah, to maintain the Torah. Answers the Gemara once again, Migdar Musa Shani. Here was just a question of safeguarding, erecting that gather when they saw things were just falling apart. So this was just a limited time concern, a time-related issue, and here they can do it. But as far as something permanent and long-term, That's questionable. So bottom line is we didn't really conclude. We attempted to bring many rayas, but it didn't really, really support Rav Chizda in his shita that Bezdin are ikadav min Torah, even when it involves creating a heter. If the purpose is to maintain a halacha, we haven't really proved that. So bottom line is, what does Bezdin have a koyach to do? Well, when it comes to mamay, when it comes to financial issues, Hefker Bezdin, Hefker, they have the ability to reappropriate, to redistribute, to nullify, to render ownerless. We learn from Sukkim that they can do. They can redistribute property as per need. As Taisus points out, well, you have to have done something wrong. You don't just step in and pull away your assets for no good reason. Now, we learned about Sheva al Tasa. Yeah, many times Chachamim, out of concern for an issur that might actually, develop, they go ahead and they cancel. They tell you to sit passively. Don't do an issur. Don't do a mitzvah or whatever, in order to maintain the Torah. Sheva al Tasa in a passive form. They can add chumros and gzeros and takanos. That's unquestionable. And lemigdar milsa, when they see a critical need to go step in and do something drastic, that they can do, even if it involves a kula. We learned that in terms of kiddushin, this whole issue is a non-issue, because every kiddushin is al das Moshe v'Yisro. So the only question remaining is, can they remove an issur? Can they make a kula when they see fit, when they see a need? If that kula will affect Klal Yisrael permanently, it's something long term, is Bezdin going to be Oker Davar min Torah? That's Rav Chizda and Rabba. Chizda says yes, Rabba says no. We leave it at that. Continues the Gemara. This woman remarried, husband comes back, she's in trouble. She leaves the second husband, she can't go back to the first husband, and if they're Kayhanim, they can't take care of her burial. Minolan, why not? Specifically the first husband, he's really her husband. Why can't he be metamet to her? Every kohen can be metamet to his wife. The answer is, the pasuk says like this: Ki'im l'she'eroi, hakarev eloi. A kohen can become tamei to take care of his wife's kvura. V'amar, what does she'eroi mean? Zoyishte. The closest he has is wife. But then it says, Uksiv lo yitama, ba'al ba'amav le'echalei. A husband cannot become tamei for his wife. So how does this work? Depends when. Yesh ba'al she'mi tamei. Sometimes a husband can become tamei. V'yesh ba'al she'emi tamei. Sometimes a husband can't. Okay, it's at how and when. Mitame hu lishtek shera. It's a proper wife, yes. Ve'enei mitame, but he will not become tamei lishtek psula to a wife as possible, such as in this case, where she's really on the way out. The mission says either a man has no rights to collect something that she finds, something that she earns. He can't override her nadarim. Why not the mitzvah? Time of my, because why? To begin with, Amar Rabbanan Metzias Isha Labala. Why does Rabbanan say that anything Isha finds goes to her husband? So that it doesn't generate animosity. Look, I'm feeding you, supporting you. You can't spare. You can't give me what you find. So in order to avoid this tension, the mitzvah of the Isha goes to the husband. But in this case, hacha, by us, she doesn't belong staying married to him. We're not concerned about Eva, about tension. Go ahead, whatever it is, let's unravel this marriage. Husband, in this case, doesn't get her earnings. Why? Why at all does a wife's earnings go to her husband? Because she takes his mezainis. Well, in this case, she doesn't. Kiva the mezayni lesla, she doesn't get mezainis from him. He's not deserving of her earnings. Likewise, you can't nullify her vows. Why? Why did her say Baal Mefer, husband can override his wife's nedarim? So that she doesn't lose favor in his eyes. Rashi says, if she makes a neder, I'm not going to bathe, I'm not going to beautify myself. Torah gave the husband the ability to override those nedarim. Shalit is gana. Right? So, generally speaking, a husband can nullify any neder of his wife. That's generally speaking, but over here, Hacha. Tizgana v'tizgana. We're not concerned about her losing favor in his eyes, because she's not meant to stay with him to begin with. Okay, so bottom line is, we had a discussion, pretty long discussion, regarding the koyach of Bezdin, and we left it as a question mark, machlokes amoraim, regarding Bezdin being oiker davar min Torah. On the one hand, they're trying to maintain the Torah, trying to ensure proper compliance, and therefore they applied whatever it is, they nullified the truma, etc., because the ultimate goal is to protect the Torah. But it is by way of making a heter, or nullifying and removing an isser. That's questionable. Rav Chizah says they can do it. The goal sort of justifies the means, whereas the Rabbi says no. After all, we're downgrading, we're mevatel an isser. We have no right to do that, even if our goal is lofty. And concluded with a few explanations regarding the halachas in the Mishnah. This Isha is meant to leave him, and therefore we suspend all the halachas and the obligation, the privileges that are generally present in a conventional marital situation. All the best to you, and much hatzlacha.